Chapter 2. Expecting the Best. 3 months after retiring from a direct sales company where she had worked 25 years, Mary Kay Ash decided to start her own company. Her attorney and many friends thought she was crazy to invest her life savings of $5,000 in a foolhardy idea for a cosmetics firm. But Miss Ash had some strong-held beliefs that she thought would work in the corporate world. After 20 years, the company recorded $323.8 million in sales in 1983, and over the previous 5 years had averaged more than a 40% return on equity. This is among the highest in American industry. One figures her company is absolutely unique. There are more women earning over $50,000 per year at Mary Kay Cosmetics than any other company in the world. What is the secret to such success? In part, it lies in the remarkably positive attitude Miss Ash displays toward every person on her staff. I wanted to create a company that would give women an opportunity to accomplish anything that they were smart enough to do, she says, and she apparently thinks that the people who work for her are smart enough to do anything. When one enters the gold glass building which houses the home offices of the firm, larger-than-life photographs of the national sales directors stand out. While some companies use paintings or sculptures or perhaps images of their products to make a statement, Mary Kay says, "We want our message to be, we're a people company." Unfortunately, when many people become leaders, they take a different tact and quickly find themselves frozen into the role of police officers. Because of superior knowledge and experience, they think that it is their duty to look over people's shoulders, to watch for errors and discourage cheating. They are there to prevent failure. By adopting such a watchdog role, they quickly set up an adversarial relationship, and people will follow such bosses with all the relish of going in for a root canal. Good managers and good teachers, on the other hand, do not waste much time doing post-mortems on the failures of their people. Instead, they look for strengths that others have overlooked and ways to encourage the gifts in their group. More than anything else is our attitude toward the people in our classroom or office that will determine failure or success at motivation. If people know we expect good things from them, they will, in most cases, go to great lengths to live up to our expectations. If we expect the worst, they will meet those expectations with disappointing accuracy. So rule number 1 for becoming a good motivator is this: expect the best from the people you lead. In Toronto some time ago, I gave a speech to an executive club, and after the meeting, an elderly man came up to talk. He was tall, slender, and elegantly dressed. At 74, he was retiring from a lifetime of manufacturing lead pencils. I thought to myself, what a boring way to make a living, and said, "I'll bet you're glad to be getting out of that business, aren't you?" "Oh no," he replied. "In fact, I'm going to miss it like crazy. And you know what I'm going to miss the most? The friends I've made in this business. Some of my suppliers and customers have been the best friends for over 40 years, and several of our upper-level managers are guys I hired right out of college. I've had a lot of satisfaction helping them succeed." As we talked, I learned that this man had built up a multi-million-dollar company and had recently sold it for a very large sum. His success should not be all that surprising, however, considering his deep-rooted belief in people. He had mastered the art of finding the good side of everyone and building on that. And in the process of helping other people succeed, he had made a lot of money as well. In any business that involves others, either as your employees or as your customers, attitude is everything. In the simplest terms, the people who like people and who believe that those they lead have the best intentions will get the best from them. On the other hand, the police-type leader, who is constantly on the watch for everyone's worst side, will find that people get defensive and self-protective, and that the doors to their innermost possibilities quickly close. How to turn your child into a thief. More and more psychological studies show that we have the power to call out the worst or the best in people by our expectations. The executive who believes you just can't get good help anymore, and the teacher who is convinced that most kids are lazy, hold a remarkable negative power over those people. Psychologist C.K. Aldrich, who worked for years with delinquent children, wrote a fascinating article some time ago in a psychology journal explaining how parents can quickly turn their children into thieves. Here's a way to do it. Let us say that your son, as most children do at some time or another, engages in some petty theft. Perhaps he steals a package of candy. If you say to him, "Now we know who you are, you're a thief, we'll be watching you from now on," is quite likely that he will steal more and can quickly graduate from stealing candy to stealing cars. On the other hand, you can react with both fairness and gentleness by saying, "Tom, that wasn't like you at all. We'll have to go back to the store and clear this up, but we're not going to make a huge thing of it. What you did was wrong. You know it was wrong, and we're sure you won't do this again." After such treatment, most kids' stealing careers are over. The principle is very old. By assuming a negative attitude and reflecting back to people all the data about their weaknesses, you put them in touch with their faults and their behaviors become worse. By assuming a positive attitude and concentrating on their strong aspects, you put them in contact with their good attributes and their behavior becomes better. Believing the best intentions. A 17-year-old patient sat in my office some time ago and said sourly, "I'm so tired of being told I don't live up to my potential. Every time a teacher starts in on that routine, I want to throw up. My dad says it about once a month." This young man is a typical product of high achievement parents. His father is a physician, who have terrible time with both their employees and their children because they expect the same sort of drive in everyone else. They are trying to inspire their son, but the result is defiance. Here's why. Saying, "You have great potential," is a compliment to his talent, but they have quickly jerked it away with the remark, "You don't live up to your potential." In the process, they have attacked his character, which is much more serious. Each of us, no matter how derelict, wants to believe that we have the best of intentions, and we want others to believe that as well. The Pygmalion effect. In George Bernard Shaw's play, Pygmalion, the professor helps a slattern by the name of Eliza Doolittle become an elegant lady. He does this primarily by treating her like a lady at all times until she begins to live up to his expectations of her. Goethe stated the principle this way: treat a man as he appears to be, and you will make him worse, but treat a man as if he already were what he potentially could be, and you make him what he should be. A famous study in the classroom by Robert Rosenthal, a Harvard psychologist, and Leonore Jacobson, a San Francisco school principal, furnishes us with a good illustration of this. They ask the question, do some children perform poorly in school because their teachers expect them to? If so, they surmised raising the teachers' expectations should raise the children's performances as well. So a group of kindergarten through 5th grade pupils were given a learning ability test, and the next fall, the new teachers were casually given the names of 5 or 6 children in the new class who were designated as spurters. The test supposedly revealed that they had exceptional learning ability. What the teachers did not know was the test results had been rigged and that names of the spurters had been chosen entirely by random. At the end of the school year, all the children were retested with some astonishing results. The pupils, whom the teachers thought had the most potential, had actually scored far ahead and had gained as many as 15 to 27 IQ points. The teachers described these children as happier, more curious, more affectionate than average, and having a better chance of success later in life. The only change for the year was the change in attitude of their teachers. Because they had been led to expect more of certain students, those children came to expect more of themselves. The explanation probably lies in subtle interaction between teacher and pupils, speculates Rosenthal. Tone of voice, facial expressions, touch, and posture may be the means by which, often unwittingly, teachers communicate their expectations to their pupils. Such communication may help a child by changing his perceptions of himself. Centering on strengths rather than weaknesses. Most of the people who come under our influence will have within themselves a mix of good and bad ambition and lassitude, strengths and weaknesses. We can choose whether to build on strengths or become obsessed with their weaknesses. I talked once to a layman in a very successful church. The pastor, who had led the congregation for more than 20 years, had some glaring faults, but the people seemed to love him and the parish had prospered. I asked the man how he accounted for this, and here is the very wise thing he said. Our minister has some strong suits and he has some weaknesses. So we have tried to specialize in the areas where he is strong and forget about his weaknesses. By taking such an attitude, the congregation had done 2 things. 1, they had avoided the backbiting and carpeting atmosphere which often exists in church or a business where there is continual criticism. And 2, with such a generous spirit, They had doubtless motivation that their pastor to do everything in his power to produce at full capacity. The result? A remarkable partnership which has produced results year in and year out. The pleasure of discovering hidden talent. When we elect such a positive view, lots of buried talents begin to surface. Elbert Hubbard said, "There is something that is much more scarce, something finer far, something rarer than ability. It is the ability to recognize ability. Average people have a way of accomplishing extraordinary things, for teachers and leaders are patient enough to wait until ability becomes apparent." The history books are full of stories of gifted persons whose talents were overlooked by a procession of people until someone believed in them. Einstein was 4 years old before he could speak, and 7 before he could read. Isaac Newton did poorly in grade school. A newspaper editor fired Walt Disney because he had no good ideas. Leo Tolstoy flunked out of college, and Werner von Braun failed 9th grade algebra. Haydn gave up making a musician of Beethoven, who seemed a slow and plodding young man with no apparent talent except a belief in music. There is a lesson in such stories. Different people develop at different rates, and the best motivators are always on the lookout for hidden capacities. One chief executive officer, when asked, "What are you in business for?" replied, "I am in the business of growing people, people who are stronger, more autonomous, more self-reliant, more competent. We make and sell at a profit things that people want to buy, so we can pay for all of this." It is not by accident that his employees, who probably would grumble about working 8 hours a day for mere food and shelter, cheerfully work 10 and 12 hours a day for a leader who keeps such goals clearly before them. A climate in which to grow. We can render the people around us a great service if we can provide an environment in which they not only can discover their gifts, but also develop them. Theodore Roosevelt wrote, "There are 2 kinds of success. One is the very rare kind that comes from the man who has the power to do what no one else has the power to do. That is genius. But the average man, who wins what we call success, is not a genius. He is a man who has merely the ordinary qualities that he shares with his fellows, but who has developed those ordinary qualities to a more than ordinary degree. People need an atmosphere in which they can specialize, hone their skills, and discover their distinctiveness. The biographies of the great are sprinkled with accounts of how some teacher or some kindly employer looked closely enough to see a spark no one else saw, and for periods at last believed in their ability to perfect that gift when no one else did. The Taft family, for instance, was evidently good at pushing their children to cut their own swath and to find a specialty to which to be proud. When Martha Taft was in elementary school in Cincinnati, she was asked to introduce herself. She said, "My name is Martha Bowers Taft. My great-grandfather was President of the United States. My grandfather was United States Senator. My daddy is ambassador to England, and I am a brownie." The nature of the human spirit. It is quite important to understand that the attitude which we approach people will be largely fashioned by what we believe about the nature of the human race. Douglas McGregor, a pioneer in the field of industrial psychology, became more optimistic about human nature the more he studied it. Attacking what he called Theory X, the authoritarian view of management, which assumes that people are morons who need to be told what to do, he advanced Theory Y, the theory which treats people as individuals and respects their human rights. Abraham Maslow's research corroborated McGregor's theories of management. A psychologist at Brandeis University, Maslow was particularly interested in peak experiences, what he called the higher ceilings of human nature. The more research he did on this phenomenon, the more convinced he was that people have much greater potential than we give them credit for. There's more of the transcendent, the altruistic, the idealistic in many more people than I had ever suspected, he wrote. In graduate school, I was exposed to some very bleak theories on the nature of mankind and read philosophers who saw Homo sapiens as quite depraved. But the longer I talk to people in my counseling chambers, especially when they're under hypnosis or tell me their dreams, the more I'm convinced that human nature has often been sold short. I see the worst ideas of thousands of people, yet I believe more than ever in the possibilities of the human spirit. The one reason I can be more tolerant than most is that as a therapist, I have the advantage of information about my patients that most people are not privy to. And I discover what we rarely, if ever, see, the totality of another one's ordinary social intercourse. When an individual appears mean and lazy, we are only seeing one part of the person, elicited by a particular set of circumstances on a particular day, and we do well to wait while before concluding that what we see is the whole person. When people change. Some pessimists would say that no one changes, that a leopard never changes its spots. But in fact, everyone is changing every day, either for better or worse. Here's a young CPA sitting in my office asking about his mother, who is a patient at our clinic. As he talks about himself, I learned that his career is soaring, that he has recently become a partner in one of the big 8 accounting firms. Most people would have a hard time believing that I spent most of 4 years whacked out on drugs, he says, but it's true. He goes on to explain that ended because of the woman he fell in love with almost 9 years ago. And as he sits there in my office, healthy, alert, successful, I realize what foolish cynicism it is to say that people never change. Of course they change, and we can influence, to some extent at least, how they change. The capacity for stretching. We will be able to make a more positive view toward our group by remembering what an enormous capacity everyone has for stretching, William James said. Everyone knows on any given day that there are energies slumbering in him which the incitements of the day do not call forth. Compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake. Our fires are damped, our drafts are checked. We are making use of only a small part of our possible mental and physical resources. Stating the thing broadly, the human individual thus lives far within his limits. He possesses power of various sorts he habitually fails to use. It is evident that our organism has stopped up reserves of energy that are ordinarily not called upon, deeper and deeper strata for explosible material, ready for use by anyone who probes so deep. The remark was not made by some shouting motivational speaker at a marketing conference. It was made by the Dean of American Psychologists. His concepts are important not only for what they say about the untapped potential in us, but also for what they say about uncovering the potential energy in those around us. If James was anywhere near right, people are capable of a remarkable amount of stretching, and in our circle of acquaintances resides a pool of power waiting to be released and harnessed. When Dwight D. Eisenhower was president of Columbia University, he called John Erskine the greatest teacher Columbia ever had. Erskine was one of the most versatile men of his era, educator, concert pianist, author of 60 books, head of the Juilliard School of Music, popular and witty lecturer. Writing about his remarkable career, his wife Helen attributed it to his defiant optimism. He was a good teacher, she said, because his own excitement for learning and his trust in the future. He would tell her often, "Let's tell our young people the best books are yet to be written. The best paintings have yet to be painted. The best governments have yet to be formed. The best is yet to be done by them." Capitalizing on the desire to succeed. It may seem an obvious fact, but so many leaders ignore the simple truth that I must state explicitly. No one wants to be a failure. Nearly all of us want to succeed. Every man believes that he has a greater possibility. Emerson said, "All my patients, no matter how depressed and down, seem to believe that they are capable of something better. They may be behaving terribly and performing poorly, but they want to do better, and there are reasons, they say to themselves, for their present poor performance." To the scornful, such rationalizations are lame excuses, and it is easy to say that such persons will never live up to their talk. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, some skeptics are fond of saying, but the point is this. Deep in the breasts of everyone, there is a drive to achieve something, to be somebody, and therein is a powerful entry point for the motivator. If you will tap into that drive and demonstrate that you believe in people's futures, they will do almost anything to live up to your expectations, and they will work harder for you than anyone else in the world. Bill Hewitt, one of the founders of Hewlett-Packard, said, "Our policy flows from the belief that men and women want to do a good job, a creative job, and that if they are provided with the proper environment, they will do so." She wanted me to succeed more than I did. I was once waiting to speak at a sales conference when the year's awards were being given to the outstanding salespeople. One woman who had performed spectacularly that year and who had made an extraordinary amount of money gave all the credit to her sales managers. As she stood before a crowd of 3,000 people, clutching the award for Best Producer of the Year, she recalled the slump she had 2 years previously. The future had looked so bleak that she was ready to resign and had even called her supervisor several times to quit. But the manager kept persuading her that she had not tried long enough, that she would not have been hired if there had not been unusual potential within her. Her voice cracked as she related that story. Then she made this insightful remark. For all those months, when I wanted to quit and didn't think I had any future, Joan believed in me more than I believed in myself. She wanted me to succeed even more than I did. The sales manager had effectively employed our first rule of motivation. Expect the best from people you lead.